Coming up, the New York Football Giants enter week number 5 with nothing but confidence around taking on the Miami Dolphins. We break down a lot of off-field conversations from Evan Neal, from Chris Mara, and ultimately, what do we think is going to become of the New York Football Giants as we work our way towards the mid part of the season? Let's dive in next. Yes, sir. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Armbrecht. Over there, Andrew Makowitz. And frankly, Andy, take a load off. You know what I mean? The high-level question I want to ask you, if we're going right into the meat of this thing, because there's so much non-football related stuff that we're going to talk about in a lot of ways, but football related. You think the season's over?
Well, it depends on what you mean by over. Like, are you saying?
Okay, sorry. Let me clarify. The Giants are going to have to play all 17 games. I don't mean
Right.
like they get the rest of the year off, but is it over? Is it over in the context of this team competing at a level where we think in weeks 13, 14, 15, and 16, we're even remotely, even just mathematically talking about the possibility of being in the wild card playoff picture?
I will not take it as far as you will. I think
I just
the
asked the question.
Giants.
I didn't. I just asked the question,
Well,
buddy.
I know where you're headed, my friend. I think all the listeners know where you're headed. My answer is this: if the Giants find a way to win against either Miami or Buffalo, where they're going to be double-digit underdogs on the road against both,
That's right.
if they can find a way to win one of those games, there is still life to be had in this season.
Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. It's fair to frame it that way. But you would then agree that if they lose both of these games, even though there's a softer part of the schedule coming up, it would effectively be over.
Well, it's to what end, right? Are you saying like, do we want to be competitive? Can we get closer to 500? Maybe. Are we looking at the playoffs? It right now, it's very difficult to envision the path for the Giants the way that they're playing on both sides of the ball, Adam.
Oh yeah, buddy. I don't like it. I don't love it. Certainly the fans want more of it, and by which I mean good football on the field. Let's talk off the field, though. Before we get to Mara kind of giving his little 2 cents, and I don't mean Johnny, about Daniel Jones and where he stands within the franchise. Let's talk about Evan Neal. He came off the field last week at halftime of that game where the Giants were obviously struggling. He said, "Bring on the booze." He basically called everybody a bunch of, hamburger, hot dog flippers. Why does a lion care, with the comments of a sheep? All that good stuff. We all know it. I'm not going to reiterate it chapter and verse. And then he came out with his generic apology, which is what every player does when they run a foul, especially among the fan base. Do you care? Do you care about this kind of stuff? Do you care about it outside of maybe that Evan Neal should realize that he's been playing very poorly? And it's hard, first I have to find a player that's been playing well. Let's say Dexter Lawrence said this, right? He's been playing well in spite of the team struggling. If Dexter Lawrence says this, does it ruffle the fans' feathers? Sure, but he's a really good player, and he's cemented himself as that in the NFL. Evan Neal, to this point, is right now on bust track. So is that really the crux of why people are actually upset about this?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the whole so first of all, what I will say is when Evan Neal's apology, he was right. Anyone that you talk to that's been around Evan Neal says that he is like a very thoughtful, like great
Yeah.
guy, kind, like generous, like all the things that make this so far out of character, right?
Mhm.
And so obviously, this never gets said if he wasn't playing so bad and wasn't just getting booed mercilessly. But as we all know, in New York, this is just not the answer. You can't say this to the New York media. You can't say this to the fan base. Saquon Barkley even said it best, like, they were here before us. They're going to be here after us. There's no reason to yell and scream and take shots at them. To be honest with you, Adam, when he said the hot dog and hamburger thing, I don't take it the same way that a lot of other people did, though I can understand if you feel like he's saying menial jobs or jobs that are beneath him.
Right.
I'm not going to listen to them. I think he was kind of just saying, like, what do? They don't play football. They're
Right. You're
not
not a
in
pro
the
athlete.
building. Yeah, they're not
Right.
a pro athlete, so they don't know like the work that goes into it and the effort. But again, it just sounded so tone deaf when the simple answer is not like, why am I going to listen to those people? It's if I play better, they will not boo me and they will not boo this team because we will be putting a better product on the field. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think so too, and I can appreciate the frustration from Evan Neal for himself personally. I'll say too, and I'm not knocking fans that want to boo either because it's within your right. I've never been a fan that boos the team because to what end? Like I get it, you're letting them know that you don't appreciate the quality or lack thereof of their play on the field, and also all the players know. Like when you're losing a game 40-0 in week one, if that had, you know that you're not everybody knows
Right.
it's not going well when you're getting your butts kicked by Seattle at home. Like we know it's not going well. So I think to that extent, again, it boils over, and that's the nature of fandom. So that's I guess I'm kind of fine with it on all sides. It's just unfortunate because I don't think it's going to help Evan Neal as he tries to get better on the field and continue to have a role with this team.
Couldn't agree more. Evan Neal apologized. I'm over it. Honestly, the sentiment is just play better and everything will work itself out. Honestly, like people will put those in the back of their mind. He'll play a little bit better. He can endear himself to the fans yet again. I had a bigger question for you just overall with the
Sure.
comments. Everyone's talking about like this, there are cracks in the locker room. Like you can feel that the
Hmm.
culture's changing. The fact that Evan Neal comes out and says this, do you feel like this is just a one-off where it's a young player being frustrated, or do you think Brian Dable is looking at this and saying, "I can't have this be the start of a mutiny going on where everyone starts clashing with the media and it shows that we just have holes in the dam all over the place"?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's kind of exists on a spectrum, right? Like Brian Dable, I don't think he's in any real danger of being a lightning rod figure around. Oh, is he going to be the head coach or not? No, he's coming off being coach of the year. I think it feels more like the roster doesn't have enough talent. Now, when you talk about other guys, like I think hearing Saquon Barkley with his comments is positive because he's on a franchise tag and he doesn't need to toe the company line here. Daniel Jones is doing the same thing when he gets up in front of the microphone. But then we talked about other guys, right? Xavier McKinney, who wants a contract, didn't get it in the offseason. You could see him maybe getting more vocal. And again, doesn't have to be about the organization or about the team, but just saying, hey, other guys need to step up, right? If he feels like it's not on him. Dexter Lawrence doesn't strike me as that personality. Leonard Williams doesn't strike, I just don't think that there's the personalities in this locker room that are going to create that kind of dynamic. And then some of the guys that maybe you could look at and say, we talked about trades the other day, a newcomer like Darren Waller, who's hasn't looked great, and that's all a part of the offense. Who's going to, who in the locker room right now could be like, it's your fault without feeling like it's coming right back at them, right? You have to have a division of, well, there's clearly 15, 20 guys that are crushing it right now, and other people aren't doing their jobs. This is what, a 90-10 split between the guys that are playing well and the rest? Like, I don't know how you could do it. So they're all going to stay together. Why? Because they're all playing pretty bad.
Shout out to Justin Pugh, who just got
Yeah.
signed by the Giants to the practice squad. Obviously, this has been brewing for a couple of weeks. Had to work out after the Arizona Cardinals game in Arizona because the Giants stayed there before playing San Francisco.
Mhm.
Clearly, with all the injuries to John Michael Schmitz and Andrew Thomas and others, clearly there's a need to get some reinforcements. We're going to see what Justin Pugh has left in the tank. But obviously, first round pick of the Giants previously, they interviewed him right away. He stood up and was basically like, "We got to, there's been times where we've been frustrated, but this isn't the place to do it. You got to be a leader. You got to play better." And it's kind of strange that he was the voice of reason out
Voice
of
of the
everyone,
Goat.
and he was here for a cup of coffee. Like he didn't
Yeah.
even know where the facility bathroom, like it may have changed since the last
Has
time
he
he was
been
here.
has he
And
been
him
officially
being the
elevated
vocal
off the
leader was a little
practice
strange,
squad?
right?
Yeah, has he been elevated off the practice squad officially?
No, he hasn't. He
Right.
hasn't. He's just
Okay, so we
there.
got a practice squad player hanging out in the locker room going, "Listen, fellas, 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 I might get cut next week, but we gotta stick together here." Yeah, and maybe that, if anything, you are like, "Well, that's a little bit concerning." The practice squad pickup is
Right.
like, "Don't worry, fellas, I'll handle the media sessions." Listen, and
Like,
we'll see how that plays out.
Isn't that Andrew Thomas's job, even though injured, to be like, I'm the big money left tackle here. Like, I talked to Evan Neal. I explained to him that I had struggles early on in my career. I got booed. But look, the fans love me. Just play better. Like, things get better. How is he not the one that's up there? Why is it Justin Pugh, who literally landed from a flight 36 hours ago, being the voice of reason in the locker room? Just a whole strange scene. But these are the types of things that happen when you start losing games that you never had a shot in at.
Well, and by the way, too, like I think the other problem with that, because you mentioned a guy like Andrew Thomas, which I think is smart to say because he's been one of the more consistent players, even if he hasn't been the healthiest of players. But you can't look like Daniel Jones, right, wrong, indifferent, the way we talk about his performance in the offense, or like he can't get up there necessarily and make grand statements because his performance hasn't been good enough. But that's who you want to be leading the team, your franchise quarterback. And let's turn our attention then to that part of this conversation. Because again, we'll see what happens with the game against Miami. You'll find out later in this episode how I have no concept of what to anticipate, and no Giants fan realistically should. But not John Mara, little baby Mara. And by little baby Mara, I mean a guy that's probably 15 years older than me. Chris Mara spoke on Daniel Jones, and he cemented. We have no concerns now, Andrew, right? We're all set. We can move forward as an organization.
Yeah, this morning, shout out to Giants Realist, had some quotes that Chris Mara said on ESPN Radio. The first one was, Daniel is our franchise quarterback, period. And then he added later, if we have a high draft pick next year, then it'll be a great opportunity to give him some weapons. And so he's kind of trying to calm everyone down. A lot of the Giants fan base is looking at these next two games, staring down the barrel of 1-5 and thinking, are we in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes? Are we in the Drake May sweepstakes? Are we in the Shadur Sanders sweepstakes? How do you take Chris Mara's comments? Do you take them with a grain of salt? Are you surprised by it? Are you frustrated by it? Like, what's your take on it?
Well, I guess my first take is like we anticipate at some point this kind of changing of the hierarchy within the organization, within ownership, is going to happen. Chris has been inside the organization for a long time as well. So the fact that he's the one that's speaking here, I think you can just start to say, hey, are we going to start to see? Yeah, John Mara always has his comments in the offseason and he always addresses the press, but maybe this is a little bit of a shift here. And while I take it at face value that this is how ownership feels, and this is ultimately how the organization feels, right? It's a 4-year deal. We know there's a 2-year out, but this goes back to my core sentiment of like, did the organization always kind of have this sneaking suspicion in the back of their minds that this was not going to be the year that we confirmed everything we thought we knew about Daniel Jones, et cetera, and it was going to be a bit of a process? Like, right or wrong, that seems to be the sentiment they're going with. And what else would you say? You know what? Maybe he isn't. Good news, we'll have a lot of options at QB if we end up going in the draft, right? Like, you're going into week number 5 here. And as we just talked at the top, if you think there's any chance to salvage this season, would the message be anything other than Daniel Jones is the guy and we can't wait? And, the only caveat I'll give here is he was like, if we're at the top of the draft. So he did acknowledge, and if we suck this year, it'll be a great opportunity to get some weapons. Like, he didn't stop short of saying, we want to turn this thing around. We want to get wins. We believe we can get wins. He just got away from the idea that moving off of Daniel Jones is something the organization is thinking about, at least right now.
Just over 6 months ago, Chris Mara was one of the people that co-signed Daniel Jones signing a 4-year, $160 million deal.
That's right.
Like, do you think he's going to come out after 4 weeks of the season and be like, yep, looking at that top of the draft?
We
Because
blew it.
also they have to sell tickets and they have to sell merchandise and they need people to go show up to games. You can't wave the white flag after 4 games. Yeah, what kind of message would that be sending to everyone in the organization? Of
Of
course he
course.
needs to back Daniel Jones. And guess what? They could still draft a quarterback 9 months from now if he's like, well, it wasn't that bad before, but did you see the last 12 games of the season? Like,
That was
you
then.
can change your
Yeah,
tune very quickly. But also, they're 1-3, as I mentioned at the top of the show. If they find a way to pull off an upset against
sure.
one of the next 2 games, you're 2-3. You're kind of thinking about, like, we got an easy schedule coming up. Maybe they could rally off some games. You can't wave the white flag on the season now.
No, we could choose to have that conversation, but the Giants certainly can't acknowledge that publicly at a minimum, let alone inside the locker room, as we're talking about keeping this team together in some regard. All right. Miami Dolphins, the Giants will be playing them. We'll talk about the line and everything a little bit later. But for now, coming into this, Gary Brightwell was questionable with his ankle. Daniel Bellinger became questionable with his knee. Micah McFadden, ankle as well. Wan'Dale Robinson. This was head coach Dable said a knee set for limited participation. Would really prefer that Wan'Dale continues to be able to go every single week. We go back to when he was drafted. You talked about this. Is he just too small to be able to keep out there? Hopefully this is like the managing, ramping up, and coming back to
Yep.
100% health. And then Saquon Barkley was out there. Jordan Renan saying while he's been out there on the field, practicing in the rain, Dable's preparing for that possibility in Miami. And he was having Saquon, his ankle retaped at practice. We'll see, said Jordan, how the Giants list him on the injury report. Don't feel great about it right now. Thoughts?
Well, it's really tough when you have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and 3 of your offensive linemen are not expected to play, and that's Andrew Thomas, John Michael
Yep.
Schmitz, and Shane Lemieux. It's one of the reasons why the Giants just yesterday also were looking for other players to join the practice squad in the offensive line outside of Justin Pugh. It sounds like Izudu would be the left tackle. It sounds like Bredesen would move to center. It sounds like it's going to be a whole hodgepodge like it's kind of been the last few weeks. It doesn't feel good, Adam. And Saquon Barkley is trying his best. He's getting his ankle taped up. You can tell that he wants to be out there. And, seeing how futile this offense has been, even without him being on the field, it does not look good all around. And it's tough because the Giants have struggled to manufacture points on offense. So when you talk about those injuries, I mean, it doesn't make it any easier when the Giants are playing at half strength rather than full strength.
No, of course not. On the other side of it for Miami, Robert Jones was designated to come back this past Wednesday from injured reserve, so he has a chance to get back into the fold here. Nick Needham, the cornerback, designated for the Achilles to return from the reserve pup list as well. So they got guys kind of coming back into the fold here. While you have Jalen Phillips questionable at the linebacker spot with an oblique, and then they recently also had an offensive lineman, Andy, that's going to be questionable or already out potentially for Sunday.
So just reported earlier today, Terran Armstead, the left tackle for the Miami Dolphins, being placed on IR, not season-ending IR, so maybe back in 4 weeks. That is one of the bright spots for the Giants of him not being there. Adam, over the last 10 years, basically since 2014, Terran Armstead started with the Saints, has had a 75 or above Pro Football Focus rating in every single season, with a couple of those topping out at 92, 93. He is one of the better left tackles of this generation. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, obviously left-handed, a little bit different, not protecting the blind side. He's on the left side as opposed to the right side. But this is a huge injury for them. They need all the help they can get on the offensive line. If you're looking for one area or one bright spot, if Azeez Ojulari can go and he's going up against their backup left tackle, maybe there's an opportunity to get pressure on Tua.
And that's really where we'll start when we talk about, I think, some of these matchups. 79 QBR for Tua coming through 4 games, this season. Best of his career, obviously. And he actually has gotten progressively better over the 4 seasons of his career, from 44 starting out in his rookie campaign to 79 now. Obviously, over these 4 games, he's knocking down 71% of his passes. You can go inside and look at it and say, hey, they took on the Buffalo Bills, got beat up a little bit, 48-20. He was fine, 25 of 35, 282 yards, and a touchdown and an interception there. When you look at him, that was his lowest QBR of the season, 56. Is that, I mean, that has to be, right? Kayvon Thibodeau maybe kind of came to life a little bit there in the Seattle game, at least for a handful of possessions. If Azeez can go here, if you're going to have any chance in this type of matchup, it has to be limiting the amount of time that Tua has to drop back, let these deep routes, let these speed, let Tyreek Hill get blowing past everybody. You have to find a way to disrupt the timing of this offensive line.
I mean, the problem playing against the Dolphins is there's a whole host of problems for the Giants playing against the Dolphins. One is
there's a whole host of problems for the
Dolphins.
Giants playing NFL football right now. But yeah, let's talk about
but specifically against playing the Dolphins right now. Dolphins lead the league in points per game at 37.5 points per game, Adam. The Giants are last in the league at 11.5. The Miami Dolphins score 3 times the amount of points that the Giants do on a per game basis.
Okay.
Not great. In terms of, what the Giants are looking at, Tua and the Miami passing attack leads the league in passing yards per game at 334. You may say, oh, well, they're doing it all through the air. That's not even what they're doing, because they're running the ball so effectively as well, which is why they're able to put up so many points on the board. This is going to be the hardest challenge for this Giants defense against a team that has both passing and rushing capabilities to blow the Giants out of the water. That's the biggest thing that's nerve-wracking to me.
Yeah, we talk. I mean, it's funny too. I think that, we knew this going to that Seattle game. And I think coming out of that disappointing of an offensive performance in that game, like, there's a world where even if you lost the game to Seattle 27-24, you gave the prediction of, I think, something around there, the Giants coming out on the short end of the stick. If that had been the case, you'd at least say, well, okay, they lost the game, but at least they were able to move the ball and have some success. So if you're taking on Miami, they're going to have quick scores, have some good drives, right? Put some points on the board, live with the results. The fact that the Giants haven't even been able to do that, the world where even a team like Miami, who averages, I want to make sure I got this up here, Miami surrenders 374 yards per game defensively. So, like, there's yards and field to be eaten up here because of how quickly they can score offensively. But if you're down 14-0 early, we know what that does for defenses. It frees them up to say, let's keep it all in front of us. Let's not get beat deep. And this is where things like whether, Jalen Hyatt has looked perfect to start the year or he's still trying to acclimate. Well, it becomes a lot harder to say, let's run those go routes, boys, when the entire defense is maybe running 3 deep looks and saying, yeah, great, we'll give you 15 yards at a clip if you can get there. And we'll still work our pass breakup. And we still have, by the way, it's like easy to look only offensive. Like Miami does have talent on the defensive side of the ball to go along with the fact that the Giants are in shambles on the offensive line.
We mentioned that the Dolphins score the most points. They also give up the 28th most points, Adam. They give up 29.8 points per game. Now,
Yep.
obviously, they've played a whole host of different teams. The Buffalo Bills put a smacking on them to raise that number up. But the Giants are 29th. They're one behind. They give up 30.4 points per game. So it's like, even in the areas where you think the Giants may have an advantage, they really don't in any of these regards. And the biggest stat that is an indicator of where things are at right now is the turnover battle. The Giants
Yeah.
are second to last in the league in turnover differential. The defense hasn't forced a turnover, and the Giants are averaging 2 turnovers per game on offense. You're never going to win when you're losing -2 in the turnover battle every game. The Dolphins are middle of the road. They're dead even right now. And so, listen, the only way that I see the Giants being able to do anything is finding a way to win some type of turnover battle, because you know that the Dolphins, when they have the ball, are going to manufacture points.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about Van Ginkel leading that defense right now with 3 sacks, 10 total for the team on the year. So to your point, they're not lighting it on fire. They do, however, though, you go inside the tackles for a loss. They have done a nice job in that regard, 22 through the first 4 games of the season. And again, situational football, to your point. Well, you got to find a way to make a turnover here. Unlike in the Seattle game where you might say, okay, if you get some turnovers, then you can kind of change the game script here. There's never going to be a time when, you could be up 14-0 against Miami. It could be the third quarter, it could be 17-3. And you'd still say you're only 2 60-second drives away from Miami being right back in the game. So unless you saw from the word go a real assertive defensive mentality here, which by the way, I'll just there was a great line from Wink Martindale on this. So, how do you feel? How are you sleeping? He goes, you losing sleep at night. He goes, I told my wife asked me, are you getting good sleep? He goes, yeah, I'm sleeping like a baby. I wake up every 3 hours. I throw up. I go to the bathroom. Then I try to I cry for a while. And then I try to go back to sleep. Like, they're dynamic. He referenced how there's coaches on the staff that remember what it was like with the greatest show on turf. He's like, this is that only on steroids now. And I'm not, no inference intended there. But like, he gets it, right? He's fighting an uphill battle, as many teams are in this type of NFL where the offense is going to be able to reign supreme. I just think that he's setting that standard of, yeah, we're going to give it our best, but let's be realistic here.
Well, we talked about the Miami Dolphins leading in passing yards per game with over 330 passing yards, but their lead back, Raheem Mostert, averaging 5.2 yards per carry as their lead back. But
And the Giants keep
the
getting
young,
gashed, man. They keep getting gashed when it matters most.
well, and that's why the big challenge that they have is Devin Achan, who is a running back rookie draft pick out of Texas A&M, runs a 4.32 40, which is just like blazing speed and unbelievable. Adam, he's averaging 11.4 yards per
Yeah.
carry. He literally only needs 5 to 7 rushes to be able to hit a home run against the defense. And that's really not not the strong suit of the Giants. They haven't been able to stop the run. You have wide receivers like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and others that are going to be able to put this secondary to the test. I just don't. I mean, do you see a world where what is this scenario where the Dolphins don't score 30 points in this game?
Oh, where they the scenario where they don't score 30 points, just to round out, by the way, on Shane, 4 big plays. Big plays considered 20+ yard rushes. He only has 27 carries. He has 4 of those for over 20 yards, has 4 touchdowns. Like, he's a home run hitter in the purest sense of the term. To go along with the fact that, as you mentioned, Mostert also has 6 touchdowns on the season as well. 2 carries for himself with that big per carry average of over 20 yards to go along with it. The world where the Dolphins don't score 30 points is where they're up 20-0 and they really don't need to. Like, where like the
Like the
Giants aren't
Seahawks,
scoring
kind of like the
offensively.
Seahawks.
Exactly, right? Like, did Seattle scored 24 points. Okay. If they had to score 31 points, do we feel like they could have? If they had to score 35, do we feel like they could have? Right. And that, by the way, that's a different type of game if you're going back and forth and battling. But I also think the deceptive nature of looking at some of these things. Not that I think Giants fans have a very healthy reality of where this team stands right now, but go back and look at any one of these games outside of that second half against Arizona, which I still don't even know what to make of that outside of, as some people said, Arizona at halftime were like, guess what, guys, we're all good here. And they did not want to win them. Now, trends on their schedule says they go the other way, but they haven't, the Giants have not illustrated that any team needs to go, hey guys, we got to lay it on thick here because we know that they're dangerous. That second half against Arizona, that was it. Nothing since then has suggested they're capable of doing that. 28 points in the second half of that game, or 31 points in the second half of that game. They have 12 against the 49ers. And by the way, like, I know you can go, and you said some of the teams like Miami's played, right? Getting hung 48 against them by the Buffalo Bills. But if you go back and you think about the idea, let's just say the San Francisco 49ers. So you go, oh, the Giants, well, they only put up 12 points, but it's the San Francisco 49ers. Like, lest we forget that this is a team that's won a ton of games, including 30-7 over the Steelers, but the Rams put up 23 points against them. The same team that the Giants were able to come back and beat, the Arizona Cardinals, we think is terrible. They put up 16 points against them. And I think that that's sometimes the deceptive nature of, well, the really good teams, what are you going to do? Well, go look at who they play and look at the points that get scored. If you want to be competitive, if you want to start tearing yourself out, this is how you do it. Look what other teams are able to do against in some of these situations. And the Giants have never, so far through 4 games, been on the front foot of any of those situations. Most exclamation point worthy is that against Seattle, they put up a measly 3 points. And that's supposed to be a team that was very gettable from an offensive perspective and being able to attack them.
The defense is not getting any takeaways. They're not really getting as much pressure as they want on the quarterback. They're not flipping the field. And the offense can't move the ball, puts the defense back on their heels, and is turning over the ball. So every
Yep.
time the Giants lose the turnover battle and they're also not moving the ball down the field, the defense has to stay on the field longer. There's just no way the Giants can stay competitive in this game if the defense can't get a turnover or if the offense doesn't play clean football. Like, to me, it has to be both at the same time, where the Giants win the turnover battle 2-0. The Giants have a couple of sustained drives on offense to keep the Miami Dolphins offense off the field, or else it feels like this could get away very, very quickly.
Coming up here in a second, let's talk about where the line stands. Let's talk about some fantasy plays. Maybe a lot of them are going to be on the Miami side of it, and ultimately our picks for the Sunday tilt on the road in Miami. Okay, Andrew, as you know, I think it was at one point a combined Giants minus 24, or getting 24 points, excuse me, over the next 2 weeks against Miami and against the Buffalo Bills, which I'd posted up over on Twitter, and nobody really appreciated the fact that I pointed that out. Now, though, where's the line started here? Currently sits at the Giants getting 11.5. Where's the movement been ahead of this game?
Yeah, so the line opened at about 11 and a half. It's moved up to 12 on a lot of books. Other books have it at 12 and a half right now, so it continues to move in Miami's favor. And the over under is moving down from 50 to 47 and a half. And what that's saying is they think the Dolphins are going to score an unlimited amount of points. It'll be roughly under 40, and they
Yeah.
just don't think the Giants offense can move the ball enough. So they're saying blowout for Miami. Giants can't score more than 10 points. Where does that land with you?
A week ago, a lot of people were saying about, oh, the over for the Seattle game, because that was around like 47.5 or so. I was like, no, no, come on, guys. Deep into the 20s here, maybe even into the 30s. And then you saw that result, which I think is directly influencing how people look at this game. It doesn't help that Miami is coming off getting their butts beaten by a division rival in the Bills. Like, dude, if this was like, rewind it when they had put up 70 and you go, oh, take your foot off the gas, looking ahead a little bit. Nope, sorry. They just got beat up. They want to make a bit of a statement. And I think it goes on both sides of the ball. So, yeah, I would expect when you're talking about a game that has an over under like that, 47.5, I mean, 35-7, right? I mean, like that's what I think. That's what I think this is indicating, is that the Miami Dolphins, if they want to, can get up into the 30s, and that the Giants are going to struggle maybe to get past double digits.
Yeah, I see. I have a little bit of a different take. I think that Miami's defense is gettable. I think like the Giants have to show the ability to move the ball in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that the Dolphins pass rush hasn't been the thing that's been
No,
powering them. They're giving up 29 points a game. They're middle of the road in rushing yards against per game. Their defense is just okay. It's not great. Jalen Ramsey isn't there. He's not back yet. They're not the massive defense that the Giants should be worried about. I think the Giants have an opportunity to move the ball against the Dolphins defense. I just don't know if they can stay with the scoring power of the Miami offense against our defense. I think that's where the game starts to kind of get away from you, and the Giants all of a sudden become one dimensional.
Sure. Just to clarify, though, 3 weeks ago, the Detroit Lions put up 31 points against Seattle. Seattle won that game 37-31. The following week, they took on the Carolina Panthers, a team that has not been able to win a game to this point, a team that through the course of their season leading into that Seattle game had scored 10 points against Atlanta, 17 points against the Saints, and followed up that loss to Seattle to go to 0-4, excuse me, with 13 points against the very gettable Vikings defense. My point here being is that the Carolina Panthers put up 27 points against the Seattle Seahawks, and the Giants put up 3. So, and I don't disagree with you, right? You look at the stats, you look at the production, you look at the players, and you do say Miami's a gettable defense. They're a gettable defense for good offenses, for even decent offenses, for offenses that have shown any ability here. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants, quote, break out here, and that could just be for even 2 touchdowns, right? I wouldn't be surprised if they get something going here. But do you agree, though, then that this entire premise is predicated on how this game starts? Like, if the Giants get the ball to start, you got to go down. This has to be going for it on 4th down, no field goals, going for touchdowns. Maybe you get 7 on the board early. And even if Miami comes right back on you, you at least say, okay, now sustainable drive, right? Like, if this thing goes where Miami's up 7-0 and 10-0 and 13-3, this is where that script starts to go out the window for you. And anything you think you can do against this team, it just doesn't matter anymore. Like, that's the nature of these games. Like, the game script matters so much. And the Giants, you saw this against Seattle. The defense kind of did its job for a little bit, kept you in it for a while, but the offense gave you nothing. You turn around 24-3.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like you want to get the ball and try to go out and score, but if you don't, and then the Dolphins get the ball at halftime, you
Right.
feel like you feel like it's pretty much game set match. I actually wouldn't be surprised if the Giants kick the ball off and defer and try to get the ball at second half and say, can we be within 7 at the end of the first half and like
Right.
maybe get
Right.
some momentum going in the second half? It's tough considering you don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball with the Miami and Dolphin offense. You're right. For me, you got to be able to move the ball effectively. Every time you do that, it keeps the Dolphins offense on the field, and you cannot turn the ball over. It's that simple for me. Man, this is going to be a tough game for the Giants to win. Like we said, what's the scenario where, the Dolphins don't score over 30 points? I think you have to maintain possessions. The Giants have to have multiple 7 or 8 minute drives to be able to kind of keep that offense off the field. Or else, to your point, if you give them so many opportunities, they're going to hit a home run at some point with a guy like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, or Devin Achane.
Who do you then any plays, as crazy as it sounds, any plays that you would put in here from a fantasy perspective? Maybe I'm assuming you're going to stay on the Miami side. I'll give you mine real quick here, a little same game parlay if you want to play it safe. The Miami Dolphins on the money line, Tua over 300 passing yards, and Tyreek Hill for an anytime touchdown. That's plus 277. Take things that seem very easy and very gettable. And if the Giants were even going to be in this game, it is going to involve a back and forth air battle. So I would put that down. I'm choosing to steer clear of the Giants here just because there's nothing to trust until I see it.
Devin Achane, anytime touchdown scorer for the Dolphins feels good. It's minus 125. It's just a little bit under even money.
Mhm.
He's had 2 touchdowns in 2 consecutive games. He feels like a guy that can break out at any point. When we're looking at the Giants, if you want to think about how the Giants are going to approach this game, they have to maintain possession. As I mentioned before, you saw Wan'Dale Robinson be a little bit of a bright spot last week, 5 receptions for 40 yards. His over-under is 35.5. You kind
Like
of
that.
feel like if the Giants are going to be in this, it's going to be a heavy dose of Wan'Dale Robinson. I could see him getting 7, 8 catches. All he's got to average is 5 or 6 yards per catch at that point. So for me, if you're looking for a Giants bet, I know that they want to get Waller involved. I'll believe it when I see it. Take what's in front of you. Wan'Dale Robinson, 35.5.
Yeah, I don't hate that one actually, because I think that one of the bright spots we'll be talking about as this season unfolds is Wan'Dale Robinson working himself into the offense. We saw him get, again, feel free to listen if you want to, Mike Kafka. The one rushing play, it looked nice. Maybe choose to do that a couple of times throughout the course of the game. So I think he is that kind of weapon for this team. Who you taking? We got 11.5 points. You taking the Giants to cover with those 11.5, or are we dumping them with Miami pulling away in this one?
It would be a very biased and colored opinion to think that the Giants can pull this one out outright. I can understand if you think maybe they can get, within 10 points and sneak in a backdoor
Little
cover on
backdoor
this
cover,
game.
little backdoor baby.
Yeah, but like I just don't see a path where you think the Giants are leading in the fourth quarter and they got a legitimate shot at winning this. I do think the offense is going to look better. I don't think they have a choice. It's almost like you got to burn the ships and and
Can't
and
look
march
worse.
forward and move on. I while the
You're
defense
taking
played
him. You're
better,
taking the
you're
points,
talk
huh?
you're talking about an offense that is almost unstoppable right now, unless you have an offense like the Buffalo Bills or a defense like the Bills that can slow them down a little bit. I'm if I was a wagering man, I would take the Dolphins. I would lay the points just like the 78% of the betting public is doing right now. Everybody likes points in offense. I think that their offense is going to be too much to handle. I'm going to say the final score is 34-17. And I think that the Dolphins race on and score over 30 points.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So you obviously would lay the points there. I think I agree with you, man. I mean, I embarrassed myself saying the Giants were going to be in the 30s against the Seattle Seahawks last week. We were one touchdown difference, but it seems so much more egregious when you're in the 30s. Like you were in the 20s, but I was in the 30s. Like I was like a psychotic. They're going to score more points in one football game than they almost did the entire combined of the other 3 games this season. I agree with you, man. While maybe the offense shows you something here, but the other part of this to note is that Daniel Jones, even when he's had those moments or opportunities when he's rolled out, he's made mistakes, right? There is an element of this season that what can go wrong, even on like a bad play, it will go that much worse, i.e., hits Saquon Barkley in the hands, pops up in the air, interception, right? Blindside, doesn't feel the pressure, fumble recovery, blocked field goals, getting returned for touchdowns. Like all these things have really stacked up, which is why in all 3 phases from a coaching perspective, we've been disappointed over the course of this year as well. So give me the Dolphins in this one. I'll lay the 11.5 points. Honestly, man, I want to be wrong about this, but I'll even go as far as to say 37-14 for the Miami Dolphins, because I just think that this is going to be some airmail early. And listen, prove me wrong. Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Azeez Ojulari, if you're out there, Bobby Okereke, right? Like these are the guys, man. Leonard Williams. Those are 5 names right there. It's your job. It is your job to give this secondary any chance to be able to go make some plays against Tua in this high-powered offense. And again, this is the mode that I'm in the rest of the year. Until you show it to me, I have to assume you're no longer capable of doing it. So the other thing you do, this has been fun, a little depressing, is you get over to YouTube and you turn on the alerts so you know when we're going live. You get over to X or Twitter and you follow at AndyMac214. You follow at Adam Arbrecht and at One Giant Podcast. You get the podcast where you get those needs fulfilled. We will be back in with a little bonus content as well. You can check out for our pick'ems that we're going to do for the course of the weekend as well. And then we'll see, man. Hopefully we're coming in guns blazing after this one, just like Yosemite Sam firing him off in the streets, celebrating what an epic and season-saving victory the New York Football Giants got down in Miami. And until that next time, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.